many of the Republican representatives in Congress came out and they were calling these the global intifada, the global jihad. I love it when they say jihad. They sound like a horse. Jihad. It's very funny. Or they say like, these are, and I quote, Iranian-backed jihadists. And I said, wait a minute, but most of those people are Jewish. Those people who took over the capital, the same people who took over Central Station in New York, which is known as the biggest civil disobedience event in America in the last 2 decades, they were all Jewish. And then I find Nikki Haley saying anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism. And then I remember it's like, oh, Jewish people in America are saddled by the fact that they are not citizens of America or citizens of the world, but they are citizens of Israel, and they have to back Israel in whatever they do. And these are not my words; these are the words of Jon Stewart. He went out and he said it's very, very important to divide these two. And what is very, very interesting.
Would you compare that on that specific point to the way that people try and say all Palestinians are responsible and accountable for what Hamas do?
Yes, yeah.
In other words, I think you can be very critical of Israeli government and their policies and Benjamin Netanyahu and the politicians, but that doesn't mean that you have to take that criticism to innocent Israelis who may have exactly the same criticism themselves.
And this is why it is very important to have these kind of discussions. Because,
you know, on this stuff about anti-Semitism, so I have an article that came out this morning about this in Jacobin. It's the Congress is absolutely wrong to condemn, to equate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. There was a time when Jacobin used to have article headlines that were sort of more interesting and evocative than that, but now search engine optimization has taken everything over, and they all just sort of state exactly what the thesis of the article is. But in any case, that's but get into some of the strangeness of this equation, like even beyond the sort of left-wing critique of Zionism that I would certainly sign on to. Like it's just a strange thing, because Zionism is a very specific political ideology that lots of people disagree with for lots of reasons. In fact, Jerry Nadler, not any kind of leftist, pointed out during the debate about this resolution that, and I start out the piece talking about this, that one of the odd consequences of this is that tens of thousands of the most ostentatiously ultra-religious Jews in New York are now, officially considered to be anti-Semites by the American Congress because they're anti-Zionist for religious fundamentalist
old country reasons.
Yeah, exactly, right. But there is, so obviously for most of this I'm sort of laying out what I see as the correct critique of Zionism, but I think some of what the Piers Bassem conversation is in effect getting into here is that there's this very strange and sort of unhealthy thing that happens where if you kind of equate Jewish people generally with the state of Israel and Zionism, but you're all in favor of all of the above, that's, good and approved, right?
Viktor Orban, great friend of Jews.
Yeah, right. It's the, and it does seem to me there's a certain having it both ways, where it's like, well, what's being, where it's a horrible and anti-Semitic thing to equate Jewish people generally with the state of Israel and Zionism if you don't like it, right? If you do like it, right, then go nuts.
Exactly.
Right? Equate away.
Exactly.
In fact, equating is encouraged.
Implying that Jewish Americans have a dual allegiance to the United States and Israel as an argument for greater surveillance of Jewish scientists or members of the intelligence community. Absolutely out of bounds, just gross Nazi stuff. saying that Jewish Americans have an obligation of dual allegiance to Israel.
Yes, that they should.
Because,
Yes.
exactly, that is entirely praiseworthy and indicates that you're completely on the right side of the Jewish question.
Yeah, all the time, right? That second one, both of those are simultaneous by, stated by the same people every day, right? And it does, look, as somebody who would prefer it for all sorts of reasons, selfish and otherwise, if people didn't, equate Jewish people generally with a bad thing, with something they regarded as a bad thing, but also, sort of more principled, intellectual reasons. In
a lot of ways,
this seems like maybe not a good idea to encourage the equation, just as long as everybody is putting the pluses and minuses on the right parts. I mean, this is a little bit like the point I've heard, that I remember you making in the past, with regards to certain kinds of social justice liberalism, that in the long run, it might not be the best, the best idea pragmatically to encourage white people to spend this much time thinking about, the importance of whiteness.
Absolutely. And I think that in some ways, non-Zionist Jews in the West are the human shields of the Likudnik types, right? They want to turn an Israeli conflict into a pan-Jewish conflict. And they're actively trying to cultivate that impression. And it would be bad enough if it were just a project of convincing non-Zionist Jews that they should back Israel. But it's convincing Gentiles, particularly the most anti-Semitic elements among the Gentiles, that all Jewish people are on board with the Zionist project.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. All right, let's go back to Piers and Youssef.
Anti-Semite themselves. MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She said I send my aides, and they took pictures of the protesters. Basically, she's surveilling protesters. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is very known for a very famous post in 2018 where she blamed the California wildfires on a Jewish space laser gun. Do you remember that? It's just they were burned because Jewish investors, Rothschild and Finstein, anything that ends with Stein, because that's, of course, sounds Jewish, they put a satellite and shooting laser beams to... It's
possible.
And not just her. You have Steve Scolalis, thank you so much. He is now the Speaker of the House, and he has been invited before for an organization that was funded by David Duke, the founder of the KKK. You have Kevin McCarthy, who is the former minority speaker, leader of the Republican Party in the House, and he accused Jewish billionaires of rigging the midterm. So how come those people are accusing us of anti-Semites? So here's the thing. So let's go to the equation that Nikki Haley put on Twitter. Anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism. No, it is true. People who hate Jews, they're also anti-Zionists. It is true. And you could be someone who hate Zionists, who don't like Zionism, and you are Semite. You could even be Jewish. And guess what? You could be a Zionist, like those people, supporting Israel, and at the same time you hate the Jews, because the chant "Jews will not replace us," these echoed in Charlottesville. It did not echo in Gaza. I mean, in Gaza they say worse stuff in between the bombing on their downtime. And these are the same people who are seen with Nick Fuentes, with Stephen Bannon, and you know what's most interesting?
Trump had him for dinner at Mar-a-Lago.
And all of those people are buddies with Benjamin Netanyahu. So how does this work? How does this work? And you know the people who speak against this, like Jon Stewart, like Bernie Sanders, like Naomi Klein, what do they call these people? What do they call them? Self-hating Jews. And you know what else now they call them? They call them capos. Capos. You know what's capos? Capos, basically these were the Jewish inmate in Auschwitz that were forced by the Nazis to stand as guards on their own inmates. You see how degrading this is. And this is the way to shut down conversation. Anti-Semite, Islamophobe, you hate America, you hate the military, you hate Egypt, war on Christmas. This is how you shut an environment that does not allow disagreement is not an environment made for growth. It's an environment for control.
You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron-exclusive post-games on Monday nights, all of the patron-exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.